Hey, good morning, everybody. That's my trusted videographer in the back. Good morning. Welcome to the Florence Unitarian Universalist Fellowship. My name is Sally Watts. It's so good to be with you today. At this time, I remind you to check all of your cellular devices so they don't ring, ding, or play music at an inappropriate time. November's theme is Holding History. And today's program focuses on that history. History has tended to ignore her story, even though women have played essential roles in every major event in the evolution of civilization. Drawing on her book, Madonna, Magdalene, and Beyond, the new edition of Mary's Power, our own Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller will help us see why this happened, how it happened, and what's next for men and women as our culture continues on its transformational path. So stay tuned. Speaking of holding history, let us remember that our history books may not have taught us this, that we are not the first to inhabit the land where we are today. That distinction goes to the first stewards of this land, the Siuslaw Indians. Let us honor with gratitude the land itself and the members of the Siuslaw tribe, past, present, and future. All right, let's officially open our service today by singing Spirit of Life. Tubi is going to lead us with this. If you can stand, it's hymn number 123 in your hymnal. The words are also in the program if you know the music. So, Tuvia, you ready? There we go, Spirit of Life.
Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of the passion, blow in the wind, arise in the sea, a move in the hand, giving life the shade of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me. Come to me. Come to me. Come to
Thank you. So do we have any guests with us today for the first time? Anyone? Oh my, we got two. Hi, do you want to stand and introduce yourself? No pressure.
Hello everybody, my name is Judy and I'm in the process of moving to Florence.
Oh, from where, Judy?
Ruth has invited me to join you this morning and I'm happy to be here.
Hey, welcome. Welcome, Judy.
I'm Kathy Bridges, and Ruth has also invited me for the first time, and I'm a relatively new transplant to Florence.
Welcome. Anybody else here for the first time? I don't think so. So what I have, Judy and Kathy, is a little book. It's our way of saying thank you for being here today. Thank you. It's a book of haiku by a local author. And she left us hundreds of books. To do what we want to give them to our first-time guests. So, welcome to Fook. And if you haven't done so already, and if you want to, you can fill out our nifty guest registry. And we'll make a name tag for you. We'll add you to our email newsletter and just get you identified. Ruth can help you walk through the process, okay? Thank you. And thank you, Ruth, our social pollinator.
Bringing it off the street.
She keeps bringing them off the street. So following today's service at 11:15, Karen, you're going to be leading our dialogue circle, hosting our dialogue circle. And Ruth Miller will be up front. So at about 11:15, we gather in a big circle up here. We continue to discuss and deepen our learning of the message today. And then after that, Ruth will lead her class on natural abundance, which explores Ralph Waldo Emerson's thoughts but put in a way where you might be able to understand them. So looking at the program, there are some events listed on the right-hand side. We've got newsletter deadline, so if you've got something you want in the newsletter. We meet at FOOF at 10 a.m. on the 10th, every Wednesday at 10 o'clock, and then we go hike somewhere. So this particular week, we're going to be hiking to Cape Mountain. Ruth will be leading a Soul Matters class beginning at 5:30 on the 16th. And just write to that email that's on there for a complete packet. It's really a wonderful opportunity to get to know other foofers in a smaller setting and more intimate way, and discussing this week's or this month's theme, which is holding history. In person and via Zoom. So Ruth will be here at the fellowship. If that's something that's not convenient for you, then there will be a Zoom link that you can join on Zoom, okay? So we'll do that the best we can. And then next Sunday we have Donna Smith here to give her service as well as her Raising Consciousness class. So that's everything for the next week. Also November is Native American Heritage and Alzheimer's Awareness Month, as well as Transgender Day of Remembrance is November 12th. That's all the news that's fit to print. 11:20. I know. I got the numbers mixed up. November 20th. So let's see, what else? Just a quick postscript. We are recording our entire service every Sunday. And we recognize there may be some of you who don't want to be recorded. So if you have a joy or a concern or an announcement you want to make, if you come forward, more than likely you're going to be on camera. Okay? If you prefer to speak from the privacy of your own chair, we'll bring the microphone to you. I want to make sure that everybody's privacy is respected. So if you come forward, just know there's a chance you're going to be on camera. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Okay. Chalice lighting. I've asked Ashley if she'd come forward to light our flame. The opening words to light our chalice come from Reverend Scott Taylor, titled, "For the Memory That Heals and Holds." We light this chalice in honor of the history that holds and heals us, for the stories of heroism that inspire our own, for the faces of loved ones who have passed, in whose images we see our better selves, for reminders of those who paved the path on which we travel and blessed us with advantages we didn't even earn all on our own. These memories do not live in the past. They carve the contours of our present. They throw themselves into our futures and lure us into building a life better for all. They are here today. Look, listen, let them in. May their light guide our way. Blessed be. So we have a responsive reading. I invite Xana to come forward. It's number 464 in the back of your hymnal. It's titled "And Then" by Judy Chicago, who is an American feminist artist, art educator, and writer known for her large collective art installation pieces about birth and creation images, which examine the role of women and history. So, Xana? You all know about responsive reading, right? Yeah. Okay.
Do you remember how to do this?
We remember how to do this. We haven't done this in a while.
That's good. All right, then I will start us off. It's called "And Then." And then all that has divided us will merge.
And then compassion will be wedded to power.
And then softness will come to a world that is harsh and unkind.
And then both men and women will be gentle.
And then both women and men will be strong.
And then no person will be subject to another's will.
And then all will be rich and free and varied.
And then the greed of some will give way to the needs of many.
And then all will share equally in the earth's abundance.
And then all will care for the sick and the weak and the old.
And then all will nourish the young.
And then all will cherish life's creatures.
And then all will live in harmony with each other and the earth.
And then everywhere will be called Eden once again.
So we do have an opening hymn. It's called, Are We Dancing Sarah's Circles? And it's hymn number 212. Tuvi is going to play it on guitar. Ruth is going to lead us with the music. So yeah, this is exciting. Are we dancing Sarah's Circle?
We are dancing.
We are. We are. Well, are we?
1, 2, and 5.
Okay, so if you want to stand and sing, or just follow along. Yeah. Number 212. 1, 3, and 5. 2 and 5.
1, 2, and 5.
No, 1, 2, and 5. Don't ever listen to me.
We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. We are dancing Sarah's circle. Sisters, brothers, all. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Here we seek and find our history. Sisters, brothers, all. 5. On and on the circles moving. On and on the circles moving. On and on the circles moving. Sisters, brothers, all.
Tuvi, I had to learn that since Wednesday. I'm
Now, why did you change the one word from history to story?
Julia pointed that out to me, and I should have said something out loud, but the UU version that he was learning from, that's what they did. They found our story, not our history. His story, her story, it's our story.
Okay, thank you. Sure, I learned something today. Are you going to do joys and concerns? This is a great time. For those who don't know, we come forward, we share a joy or a concern. Remember, you could be on camera. And I've got 2 I want to share, maybe 3. Maybe 3. But you can start. Okay.
This is the time in our service for joys and concerns. In this community, we believe it is important to acknowledge each other and take care of each other. In doing so, our connections become stronger. The interconnectedness of us all is part of the UU 7th principle. We also do this to keep each other informed of important events in our lives so we can feel closer to each other and perhaps think and find ways to help each other. Some people might not have family around, so we are all their family. So if you have a joy or concern, feel free to come over this way and you'll be handed the mic.
If you'd rather stay where you are.
Or you can stay where you are. Please don't be shy. And Sally has a couple of...
I'm going to start. We'll have Jean come forward. You'll be next. So I have 3. The first one is a joy. Darlene Norwood, you write the most incredible letters to the editor.
Yeah.
I am so joyful and thankful for your solid voice of reason. Your letter yesterday was really, really very, very, very good. So if you all don't read the Saisla News, you need to, just to make sure you catch her letters to the editor. The other joy, I'm going to put a shell in for Darlene. Number 2 is to Cindy Wabi. She has what's known as the Soup Brigade. And I signed up to help last week because someone wasn't around and I delivered soup. It was fabulous. Well, I didn't realize she wanted me to help every Saturday thereafter. So my joy is that this Soup Brigade is providing at least a hot meal of soup and crackers to people who want them. No questions, no judgment. So if you know somebody who just would like some hot soup once or twice or 3 times a week, contact Cindy Wabi. And I'm going to be delivering. We do it anonymously. We just ring the doorbell, leave the soup, and go. So, and number 3, I forgot what the 3rd one was. What was my third one? Oh, first step. So who went and got gumbo yesterday at the wasn't that great? So this is supporting the First Step program, trying to find good housing for those that are unhoused. First Step. Great gumbo, and it was a pleasure to be a part of that too. So now I'm going to move over, and Jean wants to say something. You want to be on camera?
Whatever. As some of you know, next Wednesday I have to have total reverse replacement shoulder surgery. Boy, is that a sentence or what? And I need, if anybody is going to, it's actually Springfield at Sacred Heart, Peace Health, if anybody is going, if you could drop me off, that'd be great. Now, a couple of you have volunteered to take me anyway, and Catherine's not here, but she did it the last time, and she didn't need to be there. So I'm just hoping somebody needs to be there, you know, run errands, do whatever, drop me off, take off. So,
And then who picks you up?
a friend.
Okay. So what time? Like,
I don't know
what time?
that yet, that's the problem.
Wednesday.
They let me know the day before.
Okay. So if you know you might be able to help out on Wednesday at any time?
I think it's late morning.
So I don't know what that means.
This coming Wednesday?
Yeah. Just see Jean afterwards. If you're
Yeah.
willing to help out, just give her your number and you can coordinate. Okay? Jean, put a shell in there and we'll be thinking about you.
Thank you. I'm gonna put two in here, so
Okay.
you can really.
Which shoulder? Jean, which shoulder?
Left.
Okay.
I already had the right one done.
Okay.
Now I'm gonna be matching.
Okay, good.
All right, I know that it's difficult still, I think, at the hospital when you're having surgery because you can't have people right in there, especially when you're recovering, so that makes it a little more difficult, maybe stressful for people. So we need to really take care of each other, don't we? I know you'll get the help that you need. All right, I will just express my joy this morning to see all your happy faces. It's just so wonderful to be open again and to greet people. And last week when everybody got in, we were all so excited. I said, you know, somebody said, oh, forget church, let's just have a big party. Well, we did that the other night with Judy and Ray's anniversary party, and that was a lot of fun too, the Laughing Crab. Very nice place. So, Sally will drop a final shell for all those out there whose feelings we don't know about for any reason, for any concerns or joys that they have. We want you to know that we hold you in our hearts in equal importance. And I'll close with a quote by Christopher Paolini. It says, live in the present. Remember the past, and fear not the future, for it doesn't exist and never shall. There is only now. Blessed be.
That's pretty powerful.
Thank you, Zan, and thank you for those who shared today. Jean, thank you. We'll be thinking about you. It's my pleasure to introduce Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller, who's going to talk with us today. I know you were supposed to do that, Zana, but you know, you didn't. I can't do it. You can't trust volunteers. Sometimes you just can't trust them. So anyway, welcome, Reverend Dr. Ruth Miller.
I think it's Sally's sense of humor we miss most when we know.
The warped sense of humor.
Oh my goodness, how nice to see you all. Yeah, I get to see you sometimes on Zoom, but this is a whole different kind of a thing, yes?
Yes. Much better. Much better in person.
Yes, indeed. Oh my goodness. So it sounds as if the reading and the hymn were meaningful, and I'm glad, because the dominance of one gender over another is so insidious in our culture that to even say it out loud that there is another point of view is, you know, kind of a, oh yeah, that's right. So I mentioned that the book we're working from today is this, which some of you have a copy of Mary's Power. This is the new edition. It's called Madonna, Magdalene, and Beyond. And the new edition includes, of course, new stuff. But I was asked to do this talk. Here, that might be better. I was asked to do this talk because we have, we need to understand that the history we have been taught isn't necessarily accurate. And, you know, this is a big political issue right now in our school systems, just within the U.S. history. But the history that I'm talking about is prehistory. And through the early part of written history. History is what is written. Okay? So what existed before what was written? And how did what existed before what is written shape what actually got written? And how is it shaping our lives today? That's the question that I'm exploring.
Could you rephrase that again one more time?
It was recorded. The other book I'm going to refer to briefly is a book that I co-wrote with Milt Markowitz, who is a living systems specialist and wonderful man. I think, did we get him here yet? No, we didn't get him here yet, so you might enjoy it. He's Jewish by tradition and discovered that the ancient version of the Hebrew language had a power built into it that doesn't appear to be coming through in modern interpretations, and certainly isn't in the English translation that most of us are familiar with. And so the book outlines the way to get to that place of being so integrated into what is that one's thoughts and words actually show immediate results in the world. So it's a remarkable book, and I'm really glad to have been part of it. He should have written it on his own, but he wouldn't, so there you go. So these are my reference points today. And where we're going to start is back in the 60s. Because through the 1950s, Europe and the Americas really honestly believed that only white people who lived in cities knew anything. And only white men who had gone to college could tell anyone anything. Or if they didn't go to college, they owned a business, right? So that was just normal. It was so ingrained in the thinking that when Martin Luther King came out and said, hey, we think, we actually have studied history and philosophy, and we're drawing on that. There were many, many people in the world who were just totally blown away. They had no idea because of what they had been trained to think in our culture. And then when women started showing up as having the same skills as some men, that was really scary for the culture, both women and men, because a lot of women had been quietly hiding behind their roles and didn't want to have to come out, and a lot of men had been depending on women being in those roles and were afraid. Okay? So now we're in the middle 60s, the beginning of the early 70s. You know, consciousness raising groups. I'm guessing a few of the people here were involved in some of those 1970s women's consciousness raising groups. I use the term differently today, but they were talking about shifting our awareness out of the cultural training that we were stuck in those roles. Now, somewhere in there, I graduated from high school, and my counselor, who had a PhD in mathematics, was this marvelous woman who looked at me and said, no, we're not giving you the girls' career test. And she gave me the boys' career test, because that had a wider range of options. On the girls, I could have been a nurse, a teacher, a wife and mother, or a secretary. On the boys, I could do other things. And what was really interesting, and at the time I didn't understand, the two highest scores were college professor and minister. At the time, I had never heard that a woman had ever been a minister. So it was kind of a, And what was very interesting, I took that test in like April, and in June I delivered my first sermon. Wow. I was 16.
So yeah, I guess there was some accuracy in that test. But that period where women were beginning to say, oh wow, I have skills beyond those, there was a shift into women trying to be like men. Women in business particularly was that movement. And then there was another group that said, there's differences? There are differences here, and we need to honor the differences. They're not differences in equality or ability, they're differences in approaches and thinking. And that's been a huge part of what we've been looking at for the last, would you believe, 50 years? Yeah. So, somewhere in there, partly because of all of that, a woman became a professor of archaeology at the University of California, Berkeley. Now this woman had grown up in the area around Kosovo, Serbia, that part of the world. And she had grown up collecting these little things that would show up in, when you were gardening or whatever. If you grew up in the Southwest or the Western Oregon, Eastern Oregon, you probably collected arrowheads when you were out and about. Well, these were these little statues. And they were statues of women. And some of them were tiny and some of them were larger. In Malta, they're as big as this room. They're even bigger, taller than this. They were very big. And they were women. And when the archaeologists, most of whom were men in their 30s, found these figurines, they thought of them as badly distorted fertility figures. And they called them Venuses, because Venus is the ultimate goddess of fertility. And I have a few of them in a picture in my book. And as I was looking at these over the years, I started studying archaeology at 17. You'll get to look at them more closely later if you'd like. I realized about 10 years ago, oh my goodness, I know women who look exactly like that. They're all middle-aged, post-menopausal women. The Venus figures are not about fertility. They're about honoring the wise women of the village. They're about longing and keeping grandmother with me. They have nothing to do with what those young men thought. Now, Maria Burbutas, also being an archaeologist, had some thoughts about what was in the published papers compared to what her experience had been. And what was in the published papers were that some of the things down here were very high quality and some of these things up here were low quality. Well, the strata must have been reversed. So the Bronze Age was all the high quality stuff, and before the Bronze Age it was all low quality. They were literally undoing their findings to justify a perspective. They were justifying history in order not to have her story. All the male archaeologists, white, college educated, had just not even considered the possibility that during the time when there weren't men in charge, life had been pretty good. So Maria Gumbutas became kind of a revolutionary, and she wrote a number of books. They're wonderful books. I have 3 of them. If you really want to come over and look at them, you're welcome to. And she was able to help us to see that before the Bronze Age, before there were men in charge wielding swords, there was an amazing culture on this planet. Throughout what we call the Fertile Crescent and beyond, there were river gardening villages. There were people living in villages with gardens along rivers and lakes, where the women generally managed the home and the local food supply, and the men went out into hunting and brought things back, went out fishing and brought things back, went out trading and brought things back. So the women were the hearth, if you will, Hesta, for those of you who know that, and the men were these occasional presences. And what the men did, the men decided. And what the women did, the women decided. And what the women did was basically based on relationship and intuition. And what the men did was based on focused goals and objectives. So we have the feminine mind and the masculine mind. And there was this realization in those times that both of these were essential. You couldn't do one or the other. And that only when the two were married in a merger did life work, did harmony and balance exist. So the sacred marriage, the Eros Gamos, was part of the Neolithic, the late Neolithic culture. So we had separate but equal, coming together only on holy days for the Hieros Gamos, and pretty much living separately. Very unusual for a man and a woman to be together all the time. Very normal for women to be doing basically what they do, and men to do basically what they do, coming together on holy days. Very different world. And the villages that they built had running water, had latrine sewer systems, had, no air pollution because they designed the smoke to go elsewhere. On and on and on. They were very sophisticated. And the art was incredible. Some of the art that was produced during those years is absolutely phenomenal. The line, the balance, the color, the texture on the pots. And what we began to see in the pottery, what we began to see was occasionally there would be a symbol imprinted to indicate a person or a use. So we're beginning to see what later become the Aleph Bet or the alphabet. Aleph Bet is very important in here. Just beginning to see it, okay? So that period appears to have started somewhere between 20,000 and 12,000 years ago, and seems to have been continued, and in fact I have data saying that in some parts of the world it's going on today. Which tells us it's a sustainable way of life, isn't it? That's a long time. And some of those villages are on the same piece of land for 20,000 years. That's pretty impressive. They've learned to keep the land alive year after year after year. And then something began to happen. Now, in that period between 20,000 and 10,000 years ago, the glaciers were receding northward. And during the glacier period, during the Ice Age, there were many very successful groups of people living on the glaciers, hunting the large glacial animals, the mammoths and so on, and keeping their villages, their people alive, and it was a very different lifestyle. It was pick up and move, kill something, feast on it for a week or so, pick up and move, that kind of a thing. But as the glaciers were retreating, there were fewer and fewer of those large animals, and part of it was how they were hunting them, but part of it was the system couldn't support them. It was global warming, and the culture was falling apart, and the earth was coming to an end, the world was coming to an end for these people. But humanity adjusts. And what began to happen is those people who had been following herds started managing herds. So along about 12,000, 10,000, 8,000 years ago, we start seeing more and more herding people, pastoralists. And they're generally in the northern mountains, the Caucasus, the Urals, up there, below the Arctic Circle, but in those northern mountains. And they are herding whatever animals they're inclined to herd. Initially, it's the big ones. It's the large cattle. And horses were not so big then, but they were larger than baby goats. So they were doing that. But then as they continued to live their lifestyle, they used up the grazing lands. So smaller and smaller animals, or let's go see if there's better grass somewhere else. So what we began to see somewhere between 6,000 and 8,000 years ago were groups of these herders mostly the boys, the second sons, okay? The first son stayed home and kept the thing going, whatever dad had. But second sons, third sons would go, I don't have any place. I can't live the life I've been trained to think of as normal here. So they started going out. And as I look at the dynamics, it's about every 200 years. These guys are going out to find a new place for themselves in the world. And that every 200 years continues all the way up to George W. Bush. Because their philosophy was, I am the son of the light. I stand for everything that's good, and nobody out there understands me, and nobody out there is doing it right, and I'm going to make them do it my way. I'm going to take what I want and make them do what I want. Now, I can go into the dynamics of that, and I do in some detail here, but the result was these cattle herders and horseback riders, the first cowboys, were coming out of the Caucasus and the Urals and trampling the gardens, turning them into grazing lands. They saw these lush river valleys and they went, oh good, a good place to graze my cattle. Didn't even register that what was there was food. Because for them, the only thing that's food is their herds, the milk and the meat. They didn't even register that when they saw a woman and said, you're mine, they were taking her out of a different way of living. But there was another piece. Not only were they saying, you're mine, I am the bull, you are my cow. I will keep you in my hidden sanctuary so that you will always be mine, and I will always know who the father of your children will be. That started about 6,000 years ago. And over the next several hundred to 1,000 years, that way of doing things began to become the norm. Now we see two things, two dynamics. One is we see more and more of that down from the Caucasus into India, into Egypt, and a little bit to the east, into Anatolia. But what we also see is a lot of those river gardening people saying, I'm out of here. And they go up into the northwest. And as you go from, let's say, the Caucasus and Turkey, Anatolia, here, you see that spreading. The I'm in charge culture this way, and the I'm out of here culture this way. Right? And until they got to Ireland, and then they quit. They couldn't go any further. And what we see, you can actually see the gradation of the influence of the I'm in charge guys with their cows and their horses decrease as these groups go northwest. They're more intense closer to Anatolia, Turkey, and they're less and less intense as you go up there. So that's part of how we know that this is the dynamic of what happened. So her story is separate but equal, but now underneath. And what I saw when I started studying that part of the world and the culture that is still there today is the guys are still stealing wives. That's what the whole wedding procession ceremony in most of the Asian culture is about, Asian countries is about. But there's another piece. The women who are being kept separate and hidden have a separate culture. There are whole shopping malls where only women are. No man ever comes in. Can't, not allowed. There are whole shifts in the language. When I was in Egypt a couple years back, I was trying to pick up a few Egyptian phrases, you try to be polite. I had to learn a different language from the one in the books, because women speak different words than men do. Isn't that interesting? So there really is the women's culture and the men's culture, but the men's culture dominates the women's culture in that world still today. And that continued in various ways. We see it in our religious structures, we see it in our political assumptions, etc., all the way into the period of the Americas. But the other piece that was going on is the idea that I had to be in charge, the guy had to be in charge, the guy had to control, and the guy had to have as big a herd as possible. And if you look in the Old Testament, you see this over and over again. Jacob especially had to build his herd up to be able to leave his father-in-law's community. He had to build up a big enough herd to be able to support himself and his family. That was part of it, a big herd and several wives. You know, because I'm the bull and they're my cows. Because that's how they thought. But there's a sense of, I got to accumulate. I have to acquire, and I have to accumulate. And once I've accumulated and acquired, I have to control. Because I have to make sure they're safe. I have to protect them. I have to have rules in place and strong men in place to keep what I have accumulated safe. So we start getting walls around cities. We start getting things that look like castles and fortresses. So that kind of structure emerges out of the same dynamic that we've called the beginning of the Bronze Age. Walled cities. Well, an interesting thing happens when you put a bunch of mammals in the same place and make it so they're kind of squished together. They start having an absolutely predictable dynamic, and I know a couple of you have studied this too. Calhoun's rats. In the 1950s, he started going, I don't understand what's going on in the inner cities. And if anyone has read Romeo and Juliet, or has read Socrates and Sophocles talking about the teenagers in Athens, you know what goes on in the inner cities. Or if you saw Blackboard Jungle in the 50s, which is actually what tipped Calhoun. So he can't very well create an experiment with people, so he creates it with rats and mice. And so he puts them in a barn, in a closed space, with lots and lots of food and lots of space. Just a couple of, like 3 little families, right? 3 little couples of mice. And, you know, over time, generations, you know, there's plenty of food, so we'll have plenty of babies, and we'll have lots of fun, and we'll, you know. And pretty soon, the situation gets pretty crowded. And as the situation gets more and more crowded, interesting thing happens. Roving bands of adolescents, then roving bands of adolescents who are doing harm and violence, increased infanticide and miscarriages, increase in older people, older members being kicked out as opposed to have been being cared for. Everything that we have defined as not okay in our urban culture emerges among rats and mice in a similar crowded situation when resources are beginning to be scarce. The Epic of Gilgamesh, a Sumerian, our very first story ever written, is about that. Isn't that interesting? So, we went into this period from separate but equal and balanced and harmonious, and yeah, there were issues, it was not heaven, but it was close, to, yeah, I'm on top, he's controlling, he's making it happen, and she's doing the best she can, hiding, keeping her life as lively as possible, okay? To what was happening in the 60s and 70s. The 1960s and 70s, the 2000th years, right? The empires began along about 3000 BC. The empire is still in place. We call them democratic republics, but corporate greed and other things have had us acting like empires. In the 60s and 70s, people of color started saying, no, we can think. We can be trusted. We are human beings too. And in the 60s and 70s, women went, I'm one too. I'm a person. Yeah. And so what began to happen was the breakdown of that pattern that was put in place 6,000 years ago. And that's where we are today. So what is emerging today, I think I'm the only one in the room in a skirt. And I'm wearing boots. Yeah. What's happened today, and we're seeing it in what we call transgender and queer, we're seeing this. Masculine and feminine coming together, and people being supported and encouraged according to their gifts, not according to their appearance. According to their talents and their intentions, not according to a role assigned them because of who they were when they were born. That's only been possible in a country like America, and the word America is as old as these stories I am telling you. America is a place where we say it doesn't matter who you were when you were born. You may become whatever you choose to be. And in the last 50 years, we have increasingly said that includes whatever your skin color was, whatever your last name is, whatever your gender was at birth. Isn't that interesting? So where are we going? This is where we've been. This is what has emerged. The breakdown of that set of assumptions that some guy has to be in charge, or some woman has to act like a guy and be in charge. Okay? That set of assumptions is dissolving around us. And it's very scary for the people who are used to it. And that's a huge part of the violence, the shouting, the raging against institutions that we're seeing in the media. It's terrifying to have the structure that I was grown up to believe in dissolve around me, whatever that structure is. A big purpose of those consciousness-raising groups in the 70s was to get women over their fear of making the shift from being protected and childlike in a relationship with a guy. A big part of what is going on now is we're starting to have that same awareness across the whole culture. And we're starting to provide opportunities for the men who were uncomfortable with this shift. And that's not a single person in this room. Every one of you made that shift, and I'm delighted. But out there, in the media, what we are seeing on the Senate floor, in the school board rooms, in city councils all over the country, county commissions, planning commissions, whatever it is, we are seeing this dynamic playing out. The fear and the anger that is expressed from the fear, from people who are terrified because the old order is dissolving around. You know, we've been raised with a dollar bill that says, "In God we trust." That was not on any American document until the 1950s. Period. Isn't that interesting? What was on all of them was Ordo Novus Seclorum, a new order for the ages. A new order for the ages. We have come to a time where we will be living many, many different ways. We already are. But there will be people, as Jeff Bezos just announced, born out there coming to visit the Earth. He's right. They'll be born on the asteroids, on the moon, on the Mars, and they'll come to visit Earth, as if we were Yellowstone Park. This is what he said. And at the same time, we will have people on Earth and elsewhere living a life that is far more like those Neolithic river gardening villages than the urban cities the dense, congested, resource-scarce structures that we have been trained to think are normal and civilized, civilization coming from civis meaning city. To restore Earth's balance, we need to restore our balance. We need to recognize that we are all masculine and feminine. We are all anima and animus, to quote Carl Jung, and we need that sacred marriage. We need not to be compartmentalized. Over here I'm a woman, over here I'm a man. No, right? We need not to separate and project onto someone else the qualities of masculine and feminine. We need to accept them fully, each and every one of us. And as I say, in some ways I'm preaching to the choir with the people in this room. But I'm hoping that by putting it in this framework, I can give you a way that you can understand what's going on out there and maybe be useful in helping someone get through their terror as the old order gives way to the new one. Thank you very much.
It's a good thing we're recording this so we can watch it again and again and again, right? Thank you, Ruth.
Thank you.
Thank you. I love how you weave it back to the present, where we're going and how we can get there. Take a deep breath. So for those who've never been here before, maybe haven't been here in a while, we now move into our very special part of our service, and that is our offering. We focus last week and the next few weeks on a couple of different principles. Principle 1, as Tuvia has said, and I'm going to repeat it again, in the event of an emergency, oxygen masks will drop down, place one on your face first, then help others. This is an example of why we do that, so we can help ourselves first, so therefore we can help others. The same would apply to keeping our physical necessities operational so that FOOF can survive and thrive as a physical organization. Then share all our giving beliefs with the community. We have rent to pay, building maintenance, repairs, utilities, and new renovation expenses. All organizations have expenses, and we are no different. So today we're going to take an offering for FOOF. I invite Tuvia to come forward to talk about our second offering and principle, and talk a little bit about KXCR, our community partner for the next 2 months. Tuvia?
Principle 2 is for the second basket. Helping and supporting community interests is a way of life and ingrained into our principles. Each year, community partners are selected by congregational nomination and vote to be emphasized for a 2-month period. At that time, we educate on the significance and importance that the agency contributes to quality of life here in Florence, in terms of human need, justice, and environment. We request financial donations, volunteering generously, and sharing of any appropriate goods and items. Sally, I just have to ask you a question about this next part. Is this yours? Did you write this?
Yes, that's not that. No,
That's-
that came a long time ago.
Oh, okay. Well, this is part of Principle 2, though. Before we, and we're going to introduce somebody very special in a second.
I'll be reading that part.
Oh, you're going to, okay. Now we got it straight. But this,
You want to introduce Gigi?
oh, absolutely.
Okay.
KXCR, when I mention that, all the eyes open up. This is our voice. And there is a leader of KXCR who is the president of the board who has done magical things for KXCR, and I'd like to introduce to you the leader, the president of the board, our wonderful Gigi Lissan.
Yeah, come on.
Thank you,
Fabulous
everyone.
artist, too.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you, everyone. It is really a true honor to be here in front of you, and to have the opportunity, first of all, to thank you that We are the recipient of your offering this month and next month. I don't think you have any idea how we appreciate and how grateful we are that you are helping us to continue our vision, which is to inform, to educate, to entertain, and of course to inspire you. And you're a big part of it. And so many of you have been a great inspiration, Sally. Ruth, everyone, I really appreciate everything you do for our community. I'd like to remind you that KXCR has been on the air for 7 years now, but what you need to know is also that it took almost 10 years previously to build KXCR. It took us 3 years to obtain the FCC license. And this is thanks to a group of people who had a vision, you know, I'm talking about Rand Dawson, Catherine Dawson, builders, Mary Lehman, Joanne Anderson, Stuart Anderson, Don Landstrom, and a few others. They had a vision, but it is really you that made this vision into a reality, because there's no way we could have done this without your help. So, needless to remind you, just like here, you know, we are a volunteer-powered station radio. We need the help of everyone. We need volunteers. We have a volunteer coordinator here, Ruth Baumrocker, who's been doing an incredible job here finding us people, and we have a few of our volunteers even here. So there's no other way for us to do it, and we have worked for the last 6 months or a year even harder to bring you some new shows. I'm sure you're aware that we've had so many new local shows, including, you know, Ned Hickson, who now is one of our hosts at KXCR, Dina Pavlis, who has a wonderful show, Francis Klippel, who has a meditation show. We have some incredible show to offer you, so please listen to us. I'm going to leave some card also to promote the radio station that we need. You know, when I accepted the presidency of KXCR, some people said, "Are you out of your mind? What are you thinking? You know, didn't you come here to just do your art and rest and teach, you know?" And I said, yeah, but you know what, all those people that I knew and that I love kind of begged a little bit. And I said, yes, you know, I will take it over and I will help, because it was a time where things were not doing that great. So we didn't really have any sponsor and underwriter. So the first thing I did is that to go to one of the underwriter now, and it was, I can say because they are now supporting us, Oregon Pacific Bank. And his first answer said, Gigi, you need to know that I am KXCR Bank and I know what's going on. So, you know, so I said, you know what? I'm going to beg you. I'm going to ask you to give us a chance. And I'm really good at begging, by the way. I know how to do it. I just no choice. I said, just give me a year and see what's going to happen. You know, we already had some great shows, great syndicated show, and he gave me a year, and then he doubled his thing. And so now we have Oregon Pacific Bank, we have Three River Casino, we have Peace House, we have few underwriter, but unfortunately it is not enough. Like you, we have a building to pay, we have our licenses actually, you know, Pacific, all the licenses for radio station are just incredibly expensive. We have, you know, electricity, so we really need your help. We just finished rebuilding all of our studios in the sense that we have spent over $20,000 that were grants, so it was great. They had to be spent for the equipment. We have 2 new great studios, and by the way, one of those studios are for you. If you have an idea of a show that you want to do, or you want to come and express yourself, and whatever you want to do, we will help you to put your own show, come once a month, talk about food, anything. So, you know, we welcome you and put anything you need, and this is a platform for you to communicate with your community. So again, I want to thank you for always thinking about KXCR, and I'm very, very grateful on behalf of KXCR. Thank you again.
Okay, she's got some enthusiasm, huh? Thank you, Gigi, and it's a pleasure to be a part, a small part of your success, and it's a great reminder that what the vision had for 10 years finally came to fruition. Now we have to make sure we keep it going. And just like Foof, we had visions of what we are today years ago, And we're a small group today. We used to be 70 people. We're half that right now. That's okay. It will come back. We will thrive. And we really appreciate your being with us on this. So as Grace Lee Boggs has said, building community is to the collective as spiritual practice is to the individual. You can help build our collective communities with your spiritual practice of giving. And I wonder if, Deborah, would you help on this side? And Xana, would you help on this side? We've got a basket we're going to pass around. And there's two offerings. On one side is an offering for KXCR. On the other is an offering to our particular fellowship. And in the middle are envelopes with pens if you want to put in your instructions for your cash donation. So as we go forward, I invite you to repeat after me. Divine love through me.
Divine love through me.
Blesses and multiplies all that I am.
Blesses and multiplies all that I am.
All that I give.
All that I give.
And all that I receive.
And all that I receive.
I am prosperous now.
I am prosperous now.
Blessed be.
Blessed be.
So you will notice, we've got it highlighted. KXCR here and Florence Fellowship here. Okay? So very nice, huh? We'll start right here and we'll pass it around. What's that? The new basket. Yeah. Kind of cool. Pass it with those things looking forward. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. We'll play a little music while we're passing. You don't have to. Next time. No pressure. I'm going to stand out of the way of the camera. Thank you. Thank you.
Happy to see you.
Thank you.
Nice to see you. I missed you.
Oh, that's lovely. We thank you for your spiritual practice of giving. It's received in grateful appreciation. So I know two of you had a principle 3. Let me just share it with you briefly. There's a third basket that we're not passing around. After a 2-month priority has elapsed, we don't want our community partner to be forgotten. So our community partner from last month was Florence Emergency Cold Weather Shelter, right? So don't forget them. Keep remembering them and how you might be able to help them as they pursue opening those pallets to those who are cold and wet. Okay? So thank you. Yes?
I just, in the blast, please be watching for information on 4 things that you can do to support KXCR. And in the blast, we're trying to provide information. Also, please know that the cold weather shelter needs your help more now than ever. So if you need to do something for somebody else who's really in need, you might want to think about them. If you have any questions about anything, please see me after our service.
Thank you, Tuvia. Thank you. We're going to go to closing words and extinguishing the chalice. And I wonder, Ashley, you want to extinguish this? Got the little nifty thing right there. These words come from Leah Derlin Jones, titled Inspired by Our Ancestors. For those who came before us, we offer gratitude and thanks. May their memories be a blessing. May we feel surrounded by their love. As we go forth from this time and place, Let us be inspired by their courage and their dreams. Let us honor them by doing the work of living boldly, loving mightily, and creating heaven on earth. Amen and blessed be. So here's the next part, is our closing song, is the peace song. The words are on the back of the program. In the past, and I would love it if you would do it again, gather around in a big circle around the chairs. You don't have to hold hands. We just like to kind of get kind of close if you need to. And we're going to sing the peace song. If you prefer to stay where you are, that is just fine. We will encircle you with love. Tupi's going to lead us in the peace song from where he is. And when we adjourn, we'll do a dialogue circle up front and then go into this natural abundance class. So, are we ready? Again, just be in this big circle with everybody, okay? Thank you. Ready, Tuvia?